easy questions to ask is, well, if people need to read, why can't they just read the Bible?
Yeah, doesn't it have everything you need?
Doesn't it have everything you need? So St. Basil begins by addressing this, and he says, okay, so I'm moving towards the life of the soul, which is superior to the life of the body. It doesn't make us Gnostics. We don't hate our bodies, et cetera, but we know that things are higher and things are lower. So we're moving towards the life of the soul, which is higher than the life of the body. We're moving towards heaven, which is higher than earth. We're moving towards God, which is higher than, ourselves, all these things. So if we're going to do that, if we're going to pursue that, it says, into the life eternal, the Holy Scriptures lead us, which teach us through divine words. Okay, great. So St. Basil, are you saying the only thing I need is the Bible? And then he says, but so long as our immaturity forbids our understanding their deep thought, we exercise our spiritual perceptions upon profane writings, which are not altogether different. Okay, so the profane writings are not altogether different from the Scriptures. Yeah, and they're not the Scriptures,
right?
But they're not totally different.
And profane here, does not mean
I should mention
obscenity and cussing or whatever.
It means outside the temple.
Outside the temple.
Literally, the etymology of the word profane, fane means a temple. So the profane thing is the thing that's before the temple. It's the thing you get to before you enter into the sacred space, right? So it means, we would now probably use the word secular, right?
Yeah, it doesn't mean like profanity.
Right, but the concept of the secular in that sense certainly does not exist in St. Basil's time. So he's talking about the things that exist outside the Christian temple.
Yeah.
And he says, so these writings are not altogether different, and in which we perceive the truth, as it were, in shadows and mirrors. So he's saying,
key phrase,
if we have, for the truly mature Christian, right, which is not me, but for the truly mature Christian, right, who's come into the fullness of their manhood in Christ, right, the Holy Scriptures have everything that you need. But if you take an immature understanding and you start to apply it to the Scriptures, you are going to get in really big trouble.
Yeah.
Many such cases.
And I mean, I think it's worth pointing out here, like someone who say, okay, well, you read this stuff for a while and then, St. Basil clearly is still swimming around in all this stuff.
Yeah.
Which means that he regards himself as having immaturity that he needs to continue to work on. And obviously he's also reading the Scriptures.
Right.
But what he's doing here is he's setting up a hierarchy between these things. He's not, it's really not even about like, well, someday you'll move beyond that. I mean, maybe, maybe if someone becomes like a contemplative out in a cave somewhere, then yeah, sure, absolutely.
That person honestly is not listening to this podcast, and
but very, very certainly not the case. But I mean, I spoke with an aged higher monk one time who said, "Well, one of the things that I recommend to all of my spiritual children is that they read Dickens."
Yeah,
because so many of them don't
Copperfield specifically is like
so many of them don't have a heart, and they need to develop a heart before. So yeah, this is not about saying, well, look, I'm mature. Obviously, this is St. Basil, so he's very, very mature, but he's still reading this stuff.
So the idea here is basically you got to get your reps in. So he says, we imitate those who perform the exercises of military practice, such as gymnastics and dancing. If there's not gymnastics and dancing, it's not classical education. And then in battle, reap the rewards of their training. By the way, this is the Greek argument, going back to Plato, for why you should teach dance, because it makes you better at fighting in formation, right? You learn to coordinate the movements of your body with people around you, right? We must needs believe that the greatest of all battles lies before us, in preparation for which we must do and suffer all things to gain power. What's the great battle that lies before us?
There's that underlining of how important all this is again.
Yeah. Because the battle is the fight for your soul.
That's right.
And also, you can think a little bit about St. Basil's context, a fight for a culture, right? A fight for establishing a Christian culture in the middle of a pagan world, which should be something that Orthodox Christians in America are concerned about doing.
Absolutely.
And so he says, consequently, we must be conversant with poets, with historians, with orators, indeed with all men who may further our soul's salvation. Just as dyers prepare the cloth before they apply the dye, be it purple or any other color, so indeed must we also, if we would preserve indelible the idea of virtue, of the true virtue, become first initiated into the pagan lore, and then at length give special heed to the sacred and divine teachings, even as we first accustom ourselves to the sun's reflection in the water, and then become able to turn our eyes upon the very sun itself.
That to me is the money quote. I mean, there's a lot of amazing quotes in this text, but to me, this is the money quote.
He'll say something like this a little bit later on as well. But if you did not catch it, what St. Basil just said is, before you are allowed to study the scriptures, you must begin by studying the pagan poets.
Yeah, again, he's speaking more strongly than I would. I'm not going to tell people, look, you're not allowed to read the Bible.
I did not say this. Please don't write my, boss, which is Father Andrew. like, I didn't say this. Please don't at me. This is what St. Basil says.
Yeah.
Is that if you want to learn to study the scriptures, you have to begin. Like, if you want to fight in battle, you have to begin with wrestling and dancing.
Yeah, I think if you were to try to, if you wanted a microcosmic statement of his whole argument in this thing, it's that sentence: we must be conversant with poets, with historians, with orators, indeed with all men who may further our soul's salvation.
That's it.
That's what this whole thing is about.
That's it, folks. That's the whole series. That's the whole show.
Good night, everybody. Actually, this is a daytime show.
Podcast now.
That's right. We're a daytime show. It's not good night, everybody. We're competing with soap operas and stuff.
All My Children and whatnot.
Days of Our Lives, General Hospital, As the World Turns. But yeah, I mean, and that's what this show is about. This is what the Great Tales is about. Conversing with poets, with historians, with orators, indeed with all men who may further our souls' salvation.